Good afternoon, Amma. Uh, are you hearing my voice?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, before going to today's concept, in the last class, we completed up to the things regarding the Indus Valley civilization. As a part of Indus Valley civilization, we uh, discussed many things. Okay, so like other civilizations, Indus Valley civilization also one of the important civilization which confined to Indian subcontinent, and as a part of Indus Valley civilization, we completed its location and social structure, town planning, economy, and cultural aspects. As a part of cultural aspects, we discussed about the architecture, domestic architecture particularly, and religious aspects, and food habits, all those things. And finally, we concluded the Indus Valley with the downfall. Okay, so decline. As a part of decline, we also discussed certain theories which supporting this decline of Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so likewise, as a part of the fourth module, the one of the section is about the Indus Valley civilization, and another section is about the ancient Chinese civilization. Okay, so in the fourth module, we find the two civilizations. One ancient Indian civilization, and nothing but the Indus Valley, and ancient Chinese civilization. Okay, so as a part of the fourth module, we completed the Indus Valley. Now we going to see the things regarding the ancient Chinese civilization. Okay, so we already discussed various things regarding the ancient Chinese culture and its location and society and various philosophical thinking which turned into the various religions. Okay, so finally the scientific contribution. Okay, so again we will see once these things in a detailed way. Okay, so because ancient Chinese civilization is one of the important civilization, you will know various things from this civilization. And first of all, you have to know the society, ancient society of China, because the people of China who had such who had great respect towards the society. Basically, in the society, the family is the basic unit. In the family of China, as a basic unit of ancient Chinese society, family is combination of such generations, nearly 3 to 5 generations. You will see in the ancient Chinese families. Okay, so not only that, the intellectual class or the philosophical awakening you clearly see in the ancient Chinese society, Chinese civilization, and each and every philosophy from each and every religion, which giving such importance to the family basically. Okay, so such things you'll know from the ancient Chinese civilization. Okay, so and before going to every civilization, we are knowing its geographical location first of all, and then we move to the other things next to society and the economy and polity and other things. Okay, so likewise, before going to the ancient Chinese civilization, we have to see first of all the geographical location, and then we'll move to the other things. Okay, so before going to this geographical location of ancient Chinese civilization, I have to share my screen, and then I will continue my lecture. Okay, so I will start with my screen. I have to share the screen about the ancient geography, ancient China, its location also. Okay. So first of all, which the geography of ancient China shaped which the way the civilization and culture developed, and the large land was isolated from much of the rest of the world by dry desert to the north and west, and the Pacific Ocean to the east, and which impassable mountains to the south. Okay, so this enabled the Chinese to develop the independently from the other world civilizations. Okay, so you are watching the map showing the geography of China, and I will give you in details what which rivers which flowing as a part of Chinese territory, and many physical structures also you will see, like various mountains, plains, and some deserts which adjoining to the territories of ancient China. And first of all, we'll see, yeah, like every civilization, which having a great influence of various physical features. Okay, so every civilization which influenced by one or two rivers and river valleys, and likewise in the Chinese civilization also we'll see such rivers like Yangtze, Huanghe, and Amur, Liao. Such four rivers you will see in the ancient Chinese civilization. Okay, so perhaps these the two most important geographical features of ancient China were the two major rivers that flowed through the central China, the Yellow River to the north and the Yangtze River to the south. And these major rivers were a great source of fresh water, food, fertile soil, and transportation. And they also were the subjects of Chinese poetry, art, literature, and folklore also. And the Yellow River is often called the cradle of ancient Chinese civilization, and it was along the banks of the river, Yellow River, where the Chinese civilization first formed. And the Yellow River is nearly 3,395 miles long, making it the sixth longest river in the world, and it is also called the Yangtze. And early Chinese farmers built small villages along the Yellow River, and the rich yellow colored soil was good for growing a grain called the millet. And the farmers of this area also raised sheep and cattle like that. When you see the Yangtze River, and the Yangtze River is south of the Yellow River and flows in the same direction, which is same, you'll see in the same direction, and which the farmers that lived along the Yangtze River took advantage of the warm climate and rainy weather to grow rice. Okay, so eventually the land along the Yangtze become some of the most important and wealthy land in all of ancient China. And the Yangtze also served as a boundary between the northern and southern China, and it is very wide and difficult to cross also. Okay, so the famous Battle of Red Cliff, which took place along the same river. Okay, so when you see certain other physical features like mountains, deserts, and plains also attached to it, And when you see the such mountains to the south and the southeast of China, the Himalayan mountains, and these are the highest mountains in the world, and they provided a nearly impassable border for ancient China, keeping the area isolated from many other civilizations. And they were also important to Chinese religion and were considered sacred also. Okay, so apart from this plain, these mountains and plains, you are well known that such deserts which also adjoining to it. Okay, so to the north and west of ancient China were two of the world largest deserts, that Gobi and Taklamakan deserts you'll see. And these deserts also provided borders that kept the Chinese isolation from the rest of the world. And the Mongols, however, lived in the Gobi Desert and were constantly raiding cities of northern China. And this is why the Great Wall of China was built to protect the Chinese from these northern invaders. Okay, so and apart from these, we have to discuss about another two important river valleys, which you see in the as a part of the ancient Chinese civilization. One is the Amur, and another one is Liao. Okay, so and the Amur River, which is flowing in the parts of northern Manchuria, and this as a part of northern Manchuria, you see this Amur River. This Amur River you'll see as a river in summer only. Okay, so in remaining seasons, it's only a snow. Okay, so in only summer times, in the summer, you will get the moving of water in the summer only. Okay, so another one is the Liao. Liao also another river you will see as a part of the Chinese civilization. Okay, so and when you see such other important things, interesting facts about the geography of ancient China. Okay, so the Yellow River also has the name the China Sorrow. Okay, so because the terrible floods that have occurred throughout the history when its banks overflow, and Taklamakan Desert as the nickname of the Sea of Death because of its temperature extremes and poisonous snakes also, you'll see. And much of the Silk Road traveled along the deserts to the north and west of China, and the religion of Buddhism is closely associated with the Himalayan mountains also. Okay, so after that, I will give you such things about major dynasties which ruled ancient Chinese civilization. And I will give you about these dynasties which ruled ancient China, and the Chinese civilization, which a combination of various dynasties. Okay, so these dynasties may be ruling as the one after another, and the Chinese the civilization of the ancient China dates back the thousands of years. Over this long period of time, much of China was ruled by different dynasties. Okay, so you are well known about what is dynasty, and who comes under the dynastic rule, and who were the rulers actually comes under the dynasty. Okay, so I cannot, I don't want to again repeat those things. Okay, so I will just start with this mandate of heaven, and the mandate of heaven is what the Chinese people believe gave their rulers the right to be king or a emperor, and it means that the gods had blessed that person with the right to rule, and a ruler had to be a good and just ruler to keep the mandate of heaven. And when a ruler or a dynasty lost power, and this means that they must also have lost the mandate of heaven. Okay, so when you see such a major dynasties, and here you'll see such major dynasties like the Jia and Shang, Zhou, Qin, and such dynastic rule you'll see. First of all, we'll see the Jia dynasty, the first dynasty in China. Very little is known about the Jia, and sometimes we also call it the Qin. Okay, so and another one is the Chang. The Chang ruled much of the area along the Yellow River, and their last capital city was the great city of Yin. Okay, so and the first emperor of China, which is Qin Shi Wang Di, was the first emperor, and the dynasties when you see in the structure of dynasties, and Jia or Qin was the first dynasty which ruled ancient China. And next one is the Zhou, the longest ruling dynasty in the history of China. And the Zhou first used the mandate of heaven to justify their rule. And much of the land was ruled by feudal lords who were relatives of the Zhou family also. And another one is the Qin. The Qin dynasty, the beginning of the Chinese empire, and Shi Huangdi became the first Chinese emperor. And although this was a short dynasty, much was accomplished, including the beginning of the Great Wall, and standards were set for the weights, measures, and money, and many roads and canals were built, and a single type of writing was used throughout the country, and all of these advancements would be used in future dynasties to make China strong. And after the Qin, next dynasty was the Han dynasty. The Han dynasty established a system of the civil services which the modern world is following. Okay, so establish civil service to create a strong and organized government, and paper and porcelain were also invented during this time. And the Han also embraced Confucianism, poetry, and literature also. Okay, so and from the 222 to 551 AD, you see another such dynasties ruled like the Su, Tang, and other five dynasties like the Song, Yuan, Ming. These dynasties ruled up to the 1644. But we have to see as a part of ancient China, we have to see up to the Tang dynasty. Okay, so later we don't want the later dynasties because our syllabus is up to the Tang dynasty itself. Okay, so we have to know the things up to the Tang dynasty, and Tang dynasty which ruled in between the 618 to 1907 AD, a period of peace and prosperity, and the Tang ruler is sometimes known as the golden age of ancient China. And the arts, literature, and technology all flourished during the Tang dynasty, and the capital city was the Chang'an, becomes the world largest city during the time of the Tang. Okay, so these are such dynasties which ruled China, but we don't want details of these dynasties because we are not concentrating on the political history. We are concentrating on the social and cultural history, so that we have to move to other for a basic things. You have certain idea over the quality, and just we know about such dynasties which ruled ancient China. Before going other things like the daily life, not daily life, I will give you about this daily life and other things which comes under the society basically. And before that, I will give you some certain things regarding the society. Okay, so I will share another screen and about which gives you total about the society and society and family are like that. Okay. So after completion of those, just we'll move to the daily life and various things which followed in ancient China. Okay. So the first of all, we see this development of these cultural aspects first of all, and then I'll move to other things. And in the Chinese view, people who lived outside the Chinese civilization were barbarians, and because the Chinese saw their country as the center of the civilized world, and their own name for the China was for the Middle Kingdom. And the culture that grew up in the China had strong unifying bonds from earliest times. The group seems to have been more important than the individual. A person's chief loyalty throughout the life was to the family, and beyond this, people owed obedience and respect to the ruler of the Middle Kingdom, just as they did to the elders in their families. When you see the family was a center to the Chinese society, and the most important virtue was respect for one's parents, and the elder men in the family controlled the family's property and made important decisions. And women, on the other hand, were treated as inferiors. Okay, so by this you can understand that the whole family of China was based on the patriarchal character, and where the elder member in the male elder member in the society became the head of the family, and according to his orders, everyone in the family they have to obey. Okay, so and they were expected to obey their fathers, their husbands, and later their own sons also. Okay, so when a girl was between 13 to 16 years old, her marriage was arranged and she moved into the house of her husband, and only by bearing sons for her husband's family could she hope to improve her status. Okay, so and I will give you one or two things regarding the family. Okay, so as a part of family, like the Indian society, you also see in the early Chinese society the things like the family and Gotra were the two important concepts. And within the family, you see nearly 3 to 4 generations. Okay, so where the elders in the family having such a respect, and they will not only respect, they will have certain respect by the youngers in the families, and the people particularly in the family of the ancient society had such a bond that the same bond also they maintained with the neighbors also. ఓకే. సో, జనరల్‌గా ఇక్కడ మనం మాట్లాడుకునేది ఏందంటే, కుటుంబం పట్ల వారి గౌరవం ఎలా ఉండేదంటే, వాళ్ళు ప్రభుత్వాన్ని కూడా వాళ్ళు ఒక జాతీయ కుటుంబంగా పిలుచుకునేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి. అంటే కుటుంబంలో ఉన్నటువంటి వ్యక్తుల మధ్య ఉన్నటువంటి గౌరవం గాని, లేకపోతే వాళ్ళ మధ్య ఉన్నటువంటి ఆ సంబంధం గాని, అది ఆ పక్క ఉన్నటువంటి అంటే పక్క వాళ్ళతోని అలాంటి సంబంధం మెయింటైన్ చేసేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు. అట్లనే ఏదైతే ఆ ప్రభుత్వంతో కూడా అలాంటి సంబంధాన్ని వాళ్ళు కలిగి ఉండేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు. కాబట్టి వాళ్ళు ఏదైతే ఆ ప్రభుత్వాన్ని కూడా ఒక జాతీయ కుటుంబంగా వాళ్ళు చూసుకునేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి మనకు ఉండేది. ఓకే. సో, అట్లనే కాకుండా వంశంలోని వృద్ధులని ఆదరించి గౌరవించటం ద్వారా పిల్లలను ఏదైతే వంశ గౌరవం నిలబెట్టేటటువంటి ఒక దృక్పథంలో పెంచటం ద్వారా వాళ్ళు సమాజంలో ఏదైతే ఈ పూర్వీకుల పట్ల తమకున్నటువంటి గౌరవాన్ని వాళ్ళు వ్యక్తం చేసేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి కూడా మనకి కనిపిస్తూ ఉండేదన్నమాట. ఓకే. సో, ఇక ఏదైతే జనరల్‌గా అదే ఫ్యామిలీలో మనం చిన్న ఫ్యామిలీలో వాళ్ళు ఫాలో అవుతున్నటువంటి కొన్ని అంశాలు గాని, కొన్ని నమ్మకాలు గాని మనం చెప్పుకోవాలి. ఇక్కడ ఈ కుటుంబ వ్యవస్థలో కొన్ని ప్రధానమైనటువంటి నమ్మకాలు, అట్లనే కొన్ని మూఢనమ్మకాలు కూడా వాళ్ళు పాటిస్తూ ఉండేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు. అందులో బాల్య వివాహాలు, వితంతు పునర్వివాహాలు, అట్లనే శిశు హత్య సాంప్రదాయాలు అనేటటువంటివి వాళ్ళు కలిగి ఉండేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు. అదేవిధంగా ఇద్దరి కంటే ఎక్కువ మంది సంతానం గల కుటుంబాల మీద ప్రత్యేక పన్నులు విధించడం, లేదా చట్టం దృష్ట్యా ఎక్కువని వాళ్ళు అవసరం లేదని భావించబడినటువంటి పిల్లలను చంపటం లాంటివి కొన్ని మూఢనమ్మకాలు మనకి ఇందులో కనిపిస్తూ ఉండేవి. ఓకే. సో, ఇక మనం ఏదైతే సొసైటీ గురించి మనం మాట్లాడుకునేటప్పుడు, సో వెనెవర్ యూ goes with the society, the structure of the society, and the Shang society was sharply divided between the nobles, peasants, and a ruling class of a warrior nobles headed by a king governed the Shang, and these noble families owned the land and governed the scattered villages within the Shang lands, and sent tributes to the Shang ruler in exchange for local control. ఓకే. సో, ఇవే కాకుండా అంటే మనం ఏదైనా ఒక సొసైటీ గురించి మనం మాట్లాడుకునేటప్పుడు అంటే ఒక చైనీస్ సొసైటీ అనే కాదు, ఏ నాగరికత తీసుకున్నప్పటికీ కూడా ఆ నాగరికతలో ఉన్నటువంటి సొసైటీకి సంబంధించి మనం మాట్లాడుతున్నప్పుడు అందులో కొన్ని రకాలైనటువంటి డివిజన్స్ గురించి కూడా మనం మాట్లాడుకుంటాం. అట్లనే ఏదైతే ఈ చైనీస్ సొసైటీలో కూడా మనకి 2 రకాలైనటువంటి ఏదైతే తరగతులు లేదా ఒక డివిజన్స్ కనిపిస్తాయి. ఒకటి ఏదైతే ధనికులైనటువంటి వర్గం, ఇంకొకటి సామాన్య వర్గం. ఓకే. సో, రిచ్ క్లాస్ అండ్ ద కామన్ పీపుల్, రైట్. సో, ఇక జనరల్‌గా మనం ఒక ధనిక వర్గమైనటువంటి వర్గంలో ఎవరు ఉంటారని చూసుకున్నప్పుడు జనరల్‌గా ప్రాచీన చైనాలో ఒక విద్యావంతులైనటువంటి ధనిక వర్గం ఇంచుమించుగా పాలక వర్గంగా మనం చెప్పవచ్చు. అట్లనే వారు ఆచార వ్యవహారాలను ఎక్కువగా పాటించేవారు. సో, వారు ఉద్యోగం వలన, చదువు వలన, అధికారం వలన ఏదైతే వచ్చినటువంటి భూములపై వచ్చేటటువంటి ఆదాయంతో జీవిస్తూ ఉండేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు. వీరు ధనవంతులు కావడం వలన ఏదైతే విద్యకు సంబంధించినటువంటి అంశాలు కానీ, లేకపోతే అధికారానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి అంశాలకి ఏదైతే అధికారం కోసం జరిగినటువంటి పోటీకి తగిన ఏదైతే అంగబలం, అర్థబలం అలాంటివన్నీ కూడా అంటే వాళ్ళ దగ్గర ఉన్నటువంటి ఏదైతే ఆలోచనలే కాకుండా ఇలాంటి వాటిని కూడా కలిగి ఉండటం వలన ఏదైతే ప్రభుత్వాన్ని, భూమిని, చివరికి ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థ మొత్తాన్ని కూడా వాళ్ళు చేతుల్లో ఉండేలాగా లేదా ప్రభావితం చేసేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి కూడా కనిపించేది. ఓకే. సో, వీళ్ళకి అధికారం, హోదా అనేటటువంటివి జనరల్‌గా వాళ్ళ చేతుల్లో ఉండేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి ఉంది. కానీ అదే సామాన్య ప్రజానికంలో ఎక్కువ మంది రైతు కుటుంబాలు ఉండేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు. వీళ్ళలో కొంతమంది స్వయంగా భూమిని కలిగి ఉండి వ్యవసాయం చేసుకునేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి ఉండేది. అట్లనే కొందరు భూమిని ఏదైతే భూమి లేనటువంటి ఎవరైతే రైతులు ఉంటారో వాళ్ళు ఆ భూమిని వేరే వాళ్ళకి దగ్గర, ధనికుల దగ్గర నుంచి లేదా భూస్వాముల దగ్గర నుంచి కౌలుకు తీసుకొని సాగు చేసేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి ఉండేది. అండ్ అట్లనే మరికొందరు కేవలం వ్యవసాయ కూలీలుగా మాత్రమే ఆయా ఏదైతే భూస్వాముల భూముల్లో పనిచేసేటటువంటి పరిస్థితి ఉండేది. అట్లనే ఒక ప్రత్యక్షంగా వ్యవసాయ రంగం మీద ఆధారపడిన వాళ్ళే కాకుండా చేతి వృత్తులు లేదా చేతి పనులు చేసేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు, అట్లనే చిన్న చిన్న వ్యాపారులు, అట్లనే సేవా రంగానికి చెందినటువంటి కొంతమంది, ఏదైతే వర్గానికి చెందినటువంటి వాళ్ళు, అట్లనే ఏదైతే మిలిటరీలో పనిచేసేటటువంటి ఒక సైనిక వర్గానికి చెందినటువంటి వాళ్ళు, వీళ్ళే కాకుండా మతోద్యోగులు, కళాకారులు, ఇట్లా రకరకాలైనటువంటి డివిజన్స్ మనకి ఈ సామాన్య ప్రజల్లో లేదా కామన్ క్లాస్ ఏదైతే ఉందో, కామన్ పీపుల్ అనేటటువంటి ఒక వర్గం ఏదైతే ఉందో అందులో కనిపిస్తారు. ఓకే, సో ఆ వర్గంలో ఉన్నటువంటి ఏదైతే ప్రజలు ఉన్నారో వాళ్ళకి రకరకాలైనటువంటి పేర్లు, అంటే ఆ చైనీస్ భాషల్లో వాళ్ళు ఉపయోగించినటువంటి పదాలు కూడా మనం చూసుకోవాలి. పూర్తిగా వ్యవసాయం మీద ఆధారపడినటువంటి వాళ్ళని నంగ్ అంటారు. ఓకే, సో NUNG నంగ్ అంటే వాళ్ళు పూర్తిగా వ్యవసాయం మీద ఆధారపడి ఉన్నటువంటి వర్గం. అట్లనే చేతి పని చేసుకునేటటువంటి వాళ్ళని కుంగ్ అనేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు, KUNG కుంగ్. ఓకే, సో అట్లనే వ్యాపారస్తుల్ని షాంగ్, అట్లనే ఏదైతే సైనిక వ్యవస్థలో పనిచేసేటటువంటి సైనికులు ఎవరైతే ఉంటారో వాళ్ళని SHI అనేటటువంటి పేర్లతో పిలుస్తారు. అట్లనే ఈ 4 వర్గాలను కలిపి ఏదైతే షూమిన్ అంటారు అన్నమాట. ఓకే, సో ఈ 4 వర్గాలను కలిపి షూమిన్ అంటారు. సో అట్లానే సేవకులు, గాయకులు, నటులు, సంగీత విద్వాంసులు, ఇంకా వెట్టి చేసేటటువంటి వాళ్ళు, వీళ్ళందరినీ ఏదైతే చిన్మిన్ అంటారు. ఓకే, సో వాళ్ళకు కూడా రకరకాలైనటువంటి నేమ్స్ ఉన్నాయి. కానీ ఇక్కడ మనం చెప్పుకునేటటువంటి ఈ వర్గాలని 2 విధాలుగా డివైడ్ చేసుకున్నట్లయితే సాంప్రదాయ వర్గాలు, అసాంప్రదాయ వర్గాలు. ఓకే, సో మనం ఏదైతే సేవకులు, గాయకులు, అట్లనే సంగీతవేత్తలు, ఇట్లా ఎవరైతే ఉన్నారో వీళ్ళందరినీ కూడా మనం అసాంప్రదాయ వర్గాలుగా చెప్పుకున్నట్లయితే, పైన చెప్పుకున్నటువంటి వాళ్ళని ఏదైతే చేతి పని వాళ్ళు, వ్యవసాయం మీద ఆధారపడి ఉన్నటువంటి వీళ్ళందరూ కూడా ఏదైతే సాంప్రదాయ వర్గాలకు చెందినటువంటి వాళ్ళుగా మనం చెప్పుకోవచ్చు. ఓకే, సో ఇట్లా ఒక రకమైనటువంటి డివిజన్ మనకి ఈ చైనీస్ సొసైటీలో మనకి కనిపిస్తూ ఉంటుందన్నమాట. ఓకే, సో ఇక ఇవే కాకుండా మనం అక్కడ ఉన్నటువంటి డైలీ లైఫ్, ఏదైతే చైనాలో ఉన్నటువంటి ప్రజలు వాళ్ళు రోజువారీ పనుల్లో భాగంగా వాళ్ళు పాటించినటువంటి కొన్ని పద్ధతులు ఏవైతే ఉన్నాయో, సో వాటికి సంబంధించినటువంటి అంశాలు మళ్ళొకసారి నేను స్క్రీన్ షేర్ చేసి చెప్తాను మీకు. సో డైలీ లైఫ్ ఇన్ ద యాన్షియంట్ చైనా. ఓకే, సో లైఫ్ యాజ్ ఏ ఫార్మర్, the majority of the people in ancient China were the peasant, and those may be those may be okay. Before that, I have to share my screen and okay. So daily life in Chinese society, and the majority of the people in the ancient China were the peasant and farmers are like that. So although they were respected for the food they provided for the rest of the Chinese, they lived tough and difficult lives. And the typical farmer lived in a small village of around 100 families, and they worked small family farms, although they had flows and sometimes used animals like dogs, oxen to do the work. Most of the work was done by hand only. Okay, so no machinery or no sufficient tools they follow to work in the field or at various levels. Okay, so when you see working for the government, the farmer had to work for the government for about 1 month each year. They served in the military or worked construction projects like building canals, palaces, and city walls. And farmers also had to pay a tax by giving the government a percentage of their crops. Okay, so when you see the food habits of the Chinese people, the type of food that people ate depended on where they were living in the north, living. And in the north, the main crop was a grain called the millet, and in the south, main crop was rice. Eventually, rice became the main staple food for much of the country, and farmers also kept animals such as goats, pigs, and chickens. And the people that lived close to the rivers ate fish. Basically, they depend on the seafood like that. When you see the life in the city, life was much different for those living in the city. People in the cities work a variety of jobs, including merchants, craftsmen, government officials, and scholars. And many cities in ancient China grew very large, with some having populations totaling hundreds of thousands of people. And the cities of China were surrounded with formidable walls made from packed dirt, and each night the city gates were locked and shut. No one was allowed to enter or leave the city after the dark. And when you see the family life, we already discussed about the family life, and once we'll see as a part of the family life. And the Chinese family was ruled by the father of the house. He was the elder male in the house, and his wife and children were required to obey him in all things. And women generally took care of the home and raised the children. And the marriage partners were decided by the parents, and the preference of the children getting married often had the little impact on the parent choice. And a big part of the Chinese family life was respect of their family elders. And the children of all ages, even grown ups, were required to respect their parents. And this respect continued even after people were dead. And the Chinese would often would pray to their ancestors and offer sacrifice to them, and respect of the elders was also a part of the religion of Confucianism. Okay, so Confucius theories and preachings were followed each and every level in the society. Each and everyone in the society, they can follow the preachings of Confucianism. That much respect you see for the Confucius. And when you see the education as a part of education, only wealthy boys attend the school in ancient China. They learned how to write using calligraphy, and they also learned about the teachings of Confucius and studied poetry. And these were important skills of government officials and the nobles. When you see the life of women, the life of women in ancient China was especially difficult because the whole society was in patriarchal character, and the male had somewhat importance when compared to the women, and women only confined to the domestic purpose, and they were only confined to the household activities, and they have to grow up the children, and they have to manage the household activities, and they have to manage overall the house. Okay, so they don't have that much preference than the men. Okay, so men, which is basically a capable person, but men is capable or not, it's other thing. But the whole society is based on the patriarchal nature, so that the male may be dominant. Okay, so the male dominant you'll see in the society of ancient China, and they were considered much less valuable than the men. And sometimes, when a baby girl was born, she was put outside to die if the family didn't want it, and this was considered okay in their society, and women had no say in who they would marry. Okay, so such important things you'll see in the life of the Chinese society, and you'll see such interesting facts about this daily life. merchants were considered the lowest class of workers, and they were not allowed to wear silk or ride in carriages. Young girls had their feet painfully bound to prevent their feet from growing because small feet were considered attractive, and this often caused their feet to become deformed and made it difficult to walk. And three generations, like grandparents, parents, and children, usually all lived in the same house, and most homes in the city had a courtyard in the middle that was open to the sky, and tea became an important part of Chinese culture. Okay, so which is better to be called as chai. Okay, so which is the important thing you have to know from the Chinese society. And apart from that, we have to see how the clothing they follow. And as a part of Chinese civilization, they had certain restrictions on the wearing of the cloth or like that. And these Chinese people were the important people who developed certain decorated cloth and different styles of cloth in the world civilizations also. Okay, so because the silk is one of the important contribution from the Chinese civilization itself. Okay, so clothing in ancient China was a symbol of status, and the rich and poor dressed quite differently. And when you see the peasants uh, who wore the cloth, and the poor people or the peasants wore clothing made of hemp. And this was a rough material made from the plant fibers, and it was durable and good for working in the fields. And generally, clothes made of hemp were loose fitting pants and shirts. And when you see the wealthy personalities, and the people of the higher status wore clothes made of the silk, and silk is made from the cocoons of silkworms and is soft, light, and beautiful. And the Chinese were the first to make silk, and kept how to make it a secret for hundred of years or like that. Okay, so when you see such important things like okay, so when you see the people of higher status or clothes were made of silk, and silk is made from the cocoons of silkworms and is soft, light, and beautiful. And the Chinese were the first to make silk, and kept how to make it secret for hundreds of years. Okay, so and silk garments. Silk garments were generally long robes, and they could be dyed specific colors or with fancy designs. Okay, so you are watching the artifact of clothing from China, which belongs to the Ming Dynasty. Okay, so which is one of a colorful cloth you see from the ancient Chinese dynasty. Okay, so when you see the rules of clothes, there were many rules around the colors and who got to wear and what type of clothes. And only certain people like high-ranking officials and members of emperor's court were allowed to wear silk, and lower ranking people could actually be punished for wearing silk cloth. Okay, so they were forbidden from the silk cloth. Okay, so and when you see about certain colors, uh, you see certain colors like there were also rules describing what colors people could wear, and only the emperor could wear yellow. And during the Shu dynasty, poor people were only allowed to wear blue or black clothing. And the color of clothing also symbolized emotions. White clothing was worn during the mourning. Okay, so when someone died. Okay, so which is also the same tradition where you see in the Indian society also. And the red was worn to show joy and happiness. Okay, so and the cotton, which when the Mongols conquered China during the Yuan dynasty, they brought cotton clothing with them, and cotton clothing became popular among the poor because it was cheaper, warmer, and softer than hemp. And see the hairstyles. Hair was considered important in ancient China. Men tied their hair into a knot on top of their head and cover it with a square cloth or a hat. And women braided and coiled up their hair in various styles and then decorated with the hairpins. And girls were not allowed to curl up their hair with hairpins until they were married. And most people wore their hair long. Shortcut hair was often considered a punishment and was sometimes used for prisoners. And monks shaved their hair to show that they didn't care about looks or value of a long hair. And you are watching the portrait from China during the Ming Dynasty, which is they followed such a style of clothing. Okay, so and when you see the adornment of jewelry and adornment were an important part of fashion, and not only were they used to look good, but they were also used to signify the rank also. Okay, so and there were many specific rules about who could wear what, especially for men, so that others could quickly tell their status. And the most important jewelry for men was their belt, hook, or the buckle. And these could be highly decorated and made from bronze or even gold. And women wore a lot of jewelry in their hair, such as the combs and hairpins, and such a common jewelry made with valuable metals like the gold and silver also they follow. Okay, so dear students, this is about my class today uh, regarding the ancient Chinese society. Okay, so and this is about the geographical location and society of ancient China. And in the next class, we'll go with the economy and other things of this ancient Chinese civilization. Okay, so students, uh, this is end of my class today, and again I will one second. Okay, so this is end of my class today, and I will again meet you tomorrow at same time and
సార్
with
సార్ మీరు గ్రూప్లో సెండ్ చేసిన అకౌంట్ నెంబర్కి ఫీ పే చేయాలా?
అవును.
ఓకే సార్.
ఓకే. సో, అందులో ఏదైతే అది యూనివర్సిటీ ఫీ ఫండ్ వాళ్ళ నంబర్ అనుకుంటా అది. సో, అది ఎగ్జామినేషన్ బ్రాంచ్ వాళ్ళు షేర్ చేశారు మనకి. సో, అది మీకు గ్రూప్‌లో పంపించాను.
ఓకే సార్.
ఓకే. సో,
సార్
వాళ్ళు చెప్పండి.
హార్డ్ కాపీ ఖాళీలో సబ్మిట్ చేయాలా సార్?
సబ్మిట్ చేయాలి. సో, మీరు తర్వాత ఎప్పుడైతే ఆన్‌లైన్‌లో పే చేసిన తర్వాత దాన్ని ప్రింట్ తీసుకొని, తర్వాత కాలేజీలో సబ్మిట్ చేయండి.
ఓకే సార్.
హ్మ్.
సార్ రోమన్ సివిలైజేషన్ పీడిఎఫ్ పంపించలేదు.
రోమన్ సివిలైజేషనా? సరే ఈరోజు షేర్ చేస్తాను మీకు గ్రూప్‌లో పెడతాను.
ఓకే సార్.